Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot, Mr. Rob. Of course, I am your host, BMR. Joining me in Studio B, my buddy Tex from Texas Front Porch. If not subscribed to Texas Front Porch on YouTube, please do so today. If this is your first time here, please subscribe, of course, to Bigfoot, Mr. Rob on YouTube, The Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube. Texas Front Porch again on YouTube. And my guest tonight or this afternoon, I always say tonight and today because I do shows during the day, shows at night, blah, blah, blah. Y'all get it. Brent Thomas, the Paranormal Portal on YouTube. All of Brent's links are in the chat. Subscribe and follow him. He has a great YouTube channel and a great podcast as well. You can find us on iHeart Radio, Spreaker, wherever podcasts are found. If you like and want to help support what we do, the Super Chat is open. It is, of course, a great way to support our channels across the board. Also, you can become a BMR Pirate. Join today. You know what you get? Well, you get a picture of me with my bandana next to your name and chat. It's fun. Many of you are members. Thank you for that. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all over social media. Check out our YouTube pages for current events and shows. And speaking of our shows, Mondays, of course, is Texas Front Porch, 8 o'clock to 11 on Monday. That's in the East. Starts off with the lovely Danielle Diva, the Diva Dimension. Tuesday, right back here with me, Beyond BMR, 9 o'clock in the East with the lovely Krista from the Blondes and the Booze. I don't have this committed to memory yet, but Tex now on Texas Front Porch Wednesday, 9 in the East. Tex, you've got a show weird. I don't know what it's called, High Weirdness or something. He debuted, I think, the other day. Tex is on in the morning on that new show. Check him out. Awesome. That's Wednesday. Thursday, right back here with Brunch with Bigfoot, Mr. Rob, and Tex at 1 in the East. The Bonds, the Booze, the Paranormal Podcast, 9 o'clock in the East tonight, Thursday night. Monica Rollins, Our Paranormal World. Check out Monica on her channel, 11 in the East. Fridays, back with the Blondes and Booze at 8 o'clock in the East. Check them out. And they also, Brandy, has a new show that debuted. I forgot the time. I think that's also Wednesday evening. Brandy, and I think Donnie Cho are doing a show. They're breaking down weird film footage and pictures. Check that out. Saturdays, right back here, midnight with BMR, Krista, Brandy, and Monica. It's called The Late Show or Late Night. Late night. That's what it is. Check that out. Sundays, Truth or Tinfoil at 6. I still believe that's a show. We have so many shows. And Tex, Infamous Minds. That's on Sunday, 7 o'clock in East with Danielle Diva. That's a true crime show. So, again, subscribe, like us, do what you got to do, and help promote what we have going on here. We love each and every single one of you for coming on in. Now, that's right. It dropped Monday or Tuesday. My second book, Bigfoot to Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters Book 2. Went live on Amazon. Thank you for that. Thank you for buying book 1. Leave a review on that. So this is now available on Amazon. I appreciate you all. The link for this is pinned up top in the chat room. Thank you, Danny Stanton. Your son ordered the new book. Be here Saturday. Thank you for that, Danny's son. And thank you, Danny, for being a great supporter of all of our shows across the board. So I do appreciate that. Kimber, a member for 2 months. Thank you. A BMR pirate for 2 months. Kimber, thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my man from Texas.
Hey.
What's up, pal?
Yeah, well, I'm going to wait till Brent gets up here and we can talk about this a little bit because I don't know what to think about this.
Yeah, you were telling me backstage, and we will definitely wait. We'll get into that a little bit in the show because I got something to tell Brent about me too later in the show. But this is about Brent, you know. But
It is.
yeah, but we're all going to kick back, three dudes talking paranormal, talking cryptids, talking about these rabbit holes. So, without further ado, thank you for everybody for coming on in and supporting the show, watching the show, whether you're listening in the chat room, watching in the chat room, or just listening in your car, wherever you may be today. Excuse me. So, I'm going to bring up Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal. All right. Yeah, I need to get that.
Thank you, everybody.
I love that. You know, it's hey Brent, that's awesome. It's so funny. I got to get with you later because I want to get a mixer because I want to incorporate in the future for my show stuff like that. So yeah, because I got to tell you, I'm going to say this right out of the get go since I'm talking about you and just what you did. Thank you, Denise, for the super sticker. You're awesome. Here's the thing. We were talking backstage a little bit, and I've been following your show ever since I thought about doing a podcast. I love the way your show has evolved. I got to tell you, I'm a little jealous because the graphics that you have on your live shows on YouTube, Brent Paranormal Portal on YouTube, they're awesome, dude. I mean, I like the way their chat room is set up. I like the graphics. I like the beginning, the way the show starts with your video. Dude, and I've watched you since 2016, 2017, and you get better and better each and every year. But I got to tell you, the aesthetics that you bring on YouTube, bar none, are in the top 5 on YouTube.
Oh. You know, it's always been evolving and I'm essentially a one-man show like you guys are. I mean, you know, we're just sorting it out as we go. I don't have a production team or anything like that, but I have had several viewers that have sent in little video segments. Actually, the news, when I go to the news segment, that was done by Wes Germer and of Sasquatch Chronicles, and it's really cool. I've got the Unknown has contributed some. I guess she's several different kinds of owls, but right now her name is Grateful Owl. She did the one for the Cryptid Corner and stuff. So I mean, I'd love to take credit for all of it, but honestly, I've just been really fortunate to have some incredible people supporting what I'm doing. So, but yeah, I'll definitely be happy to talk with you about that and turn you on to some tools that I've learned through the years, which have helped me a bunch.
Yeah, you know, and myself and Tex, our shows have certainly evolved. We were just cryptid guys. Now we do paranormal, UFO, alien, anything that's really encompasses all this because last year, a couple of years ago, we came to the realization that everything we talk about is all connected in one way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I personally have had a lot of paranormal experiences throughout my life since the age of 5 and 6, and they continued through current present day. And until I had my Bigfoot experience is when I said, you know, wow, I got to send that message. But I wasn't planning on becoming a paranormal podcaster or a cryptid podcaster. I got a hold of Tex because I wanted to be a sports guy. I want to have a sports show. I still didn't really want to dive deep into this rabbit hole of the paranormal high strangeness. Sure, Rob, I'll help you with that. And I've known Tex for a couple years prior when he had his show started a couple years before I did. Yeah, why don't you do me a favor? You know, we'll get together. I'll help you. Why don't you come on my show a little bit? You know, I'll give you a couple, 3 months to think about it. 3 days later, man, you're on my show as my co-host. Talk to Bigfoot. I'm like, oh, and then I kind of it kind of evolved from there. Thank you, Tex, by the way, for keeping me away from my true passion of sports.
You know,
but this what I do today is 1A is sports and 1B is what I do today now, which I love, and I'm grateful for Tex for that.
Yeah, I could have swore this show was about Brent.
You know,
what is about Brent?
I do remember, Rob,
yes.
the first time you called in and shared your story on my YouTube show, and that was it was incredibly powerful and emotional. And here's the thing: I think like some people are like extraordinarily competitive about all of this. Like, well, you gotta, come to our shows and screw everybody else. But I think the more voices that are involved in this, the better, because I think we're all kind of on a journey to try to understand what the hell's going on. What is it that people are experiencing, and how do you work through that? Plus, it creates such an amazing sense of community, because I think a lot of times people going through paranormal events are incredibly isolated by those events, because who do you talk to? You can't go to work and say, geez, Phil, I just saw a Bigfoot, or God, my bed lifted up last night, or things like that. People will be like
Right.
spitting you for a wraparound jacket. But we have this amazing community of people, and I think it's much more profoundly common than a lot of people are led to believe, just because people don't know how to talk about it. So I think that what we're doing is really just furthering the conversation, giving people an avenue to explore this stuff and to vent and get it out. I mean, I'm sure you guys have both experienced this as well, but how many times have you talked to somebody about their experiences and they're like, oh God, it feels like I just put down a load of bricks. I've been carrying this for decades, And so it's this incredible cathartic experience, and it emboldens more people to come forward, because they listen and go, oh, I that's very similar to what I experienced. I should reach out too. And so this evolving, expanding conversation, I think, is just good for everybody, because up until our current age, this hasn't been the norm.
No, it's never been the norm. And the reason, Tex, why I brought up me really quickly, I got this show going, is because we all have a reason why we do these podcasts. There's got to be I don't think you wake up in the middle of the day and say, hey, I'm going to go start a Bigfoot show. You just don't do that. There has to be something that triggers your thought process to do this. So for me, it was eventually having my encounter in 2018. So Brent, for you, was starting the portal. What was the reasoning behind you even starting the Paranormal Portal?
Well, like both of you, I've had several different varied experiences with different phenomena. So, and it's funny because this seems to be a very real phenomena. But once somebody experiences something, they seem so much more likely to go on and experience so much more. And it's like this seal is broken, or this awareness is opened up in our minds after seeing something, that suddenly it's coming out of the woodwork almost. And I think that, the biggest part of it was I've always been fascinated with this stuff, even though my first, encounter was when I was 14. So it's not like I grew up from a very young age with this stuff, but I've been fascinated with it forever, because I know it may sound cliche because I've said it so many times, but I couldn't be more sincere. I love the idea that the world still has so much mystery and so much to uncover. I don't want to live in a world where it's all clinically sanitized and labeled and put on shelves. That to me is absolutely boring and horrible. But I love the idea that, there's something going on over at that Smith house and nobody knows what it is and nobody can live there. Well, that's amazing to me, because something is being demonstrated that defies our traditional understandings of science and physics. And these impossible events are happening, which obviously demonstrate that it's possible. And so all of this stuff together really, really seems to indicate that reality isn't this rigid box that we're led to believe. It's not this concrete structure where we bounce off the walls and you got to stay inside because there's rules. And then this stuff happens that shows us, wait, reality is fluid and dynamic, and has layers that we don't even have any understanding of. So to me, that's incredibly exciting.
For me, it's again all about the mystery, and I'm not here seeking the truth. I mean, sure, we all want the truth, but what is the truth really? It's only based on our experiences, what we've learned in the field. That is what it's like for me. Thank you, Pixie Laura, for gifting 5 new pirates. And text for you too, man. It's kind of the same for you, is it not?
What?
When you get started, you're so, that's why I love this guy. He's just so
So glad Tex could join us.
So glad, hey, Texas. Tex, why you started, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I kind of fell into it, honestly. I mean, I did the same thing Rob did, called into a show or wrote into a show actually, and ended up sharing my encounter, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, it kind of is how it is. I mean, it's a
but
basis for everything.
I want to touch on what you said, because Brent, you're right. Once you have an experience, I don't think, and of course we've all talked about the whole marked thing, and I don't think that's it. I really don't. I think what it does, I think once we have an experience, we realize that this stuff is real. And like you said, I think it's more of an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that we're opening ourselves to it, because, and I guess maybe you are, maybe at first, once you kind of get your feet wet, but once you learn that you really don't want to open yourself up, but you still are aware of what different stuff is going around, and it's not, to me, it's no different than buying a car you don't see anywhere on the road, and then once you buy the damn car, you see them everywhere. I think it's the same principle.
Yeah. It's like a seal's broken. Like it just opens this inner awareness, or maybe it's just that the world is so busy and we're just overstimulated all the time with our multimedia and dynamic sound and lights and all of this stuff, that this stuff smashes through sometimes. It's like, boom, something changes. Maybe it's electrochemical in the brain, maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's a combination of all those, but it definitely is something that really took me by surprise, because honestly, I had many experiences myself, but I thought I was the anomaly. I thought that, and when I first started doing the Paranormal Portal, I never talked about my own experiences, because I never wanted, in my mind, that would be kind of egotistical. Like, well, yeah, it's kind of convenient. You got a paranormal show. Oh, sure, you've seen a UFO. Oh, sure, you've had ghosts. That makes perfect sense. And I didn't want that kind of ridicule, but I did find that once I started opening up about my experiences, it created more of a community, in that I wasn't the reporter looking in on this. I was an experiencer as well. And so I think it helped to bridge a gap that maybe some people would have with just talking about events. And that's fine. Not like everybody has to have experiences, but I think when you're able to empathize on a very personal level with what somebody's telling you, it does create better conversation. It creates an understanding that somebody on the outside just can't understand. It's like, well, I've never seen anything move without somebody touching it, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You sound crazy. But when I've seen things move that were not touched, now there's an understanding. Now there's a sense of cohesiveness to the people that are coming on the shows.
Right.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, I don't. And you talk about, a seal breaking open, and I think you're right. I think it reopens something that we had as children. Mm-hmm. Because of the imaginary friends and all this kind of stuff. We were, I think we almost regain a piece of our innocence.
Yes. Do you mind if I say something in response to that? Basically, I was always fascinated by the fact that a lot of times when there's a haunting, the first ones aware of it are usually the pets, but then come small children. That there's these are the early warning systems, if you will, that there's a presence around, and it always fascinated me that something changes with these children, that at a certain age, like 5 to 7 years old, suddenly they're not seeing and talking to the old man in the closet anymore, or they're not having tea parties with the little girl who has, matted hair or something, I mean, but these experiences are so incredibly visceral and profound that,
Right.
these kids to them, the awareness is absolutely there. So this is kind of a long drawn out explanation. So forgive me in advance. I don't mean to monopolize all the time, but
Brent, we're here for you.
all
Promote
right.
Brent Thomas, the Paranormal Portal, found on YouTube. Also, you have podcasts. Go, Brent.
All right. So
You don't want text talking for 40 minutes. You don't.
So what I found, and it was odd that I stumbled onto it, and it wasn't a direct relation to what I was thinking about, but I'm always thinking about this stuff. And I happened to catch a clip of the Joe Rogan show somewhere on YouTube. I don't know, but he was interviewing this guy that said, well, kids brains are not the same as adult brains. And I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued. So I started really paying attention. And he said that between birth and about 5 to 7 years old, kids are naturally in a theta state. And
Right.
theta state, you might be more familiar with it, is that's the state that hypnotists work to bring people into in order to have this absolutely clear recollection and to be able to relive events and all of this stuff. So it's a very profound mental state, but somehow at 5 to 7 years old, their brain and brain chemistry starts changing and evolving into the adult brain, which is not in the theta state. I don't remember the state that he said it was, but instantly I was like, could that be it? Could that be what's going on, is that these kids are in this natural theta state, so they're wide open, and you can see it because they can hold a piece of plastic and have grand adventures. I mean, they're just able to create these amazing experiences and worlds. Their imagination is wide open, but so much more is wide open. And I oftentimes wonder if that's not the case that some people find themselves in, where like, for instance, the odd phenomena, and I'm not claiming to understand this, whether Bigfoot has a supernatural ability or if it's maybe not quite here or can be here and not here or whatever. So I can't speak with any authority to that. But what I always been fascinated with was like stories of, well, the Bigfoot was right there and then it wasn't. It just melted away. So I'm wondering that when people are in, we oftentimes go into natural theta states. Like, we often go into natural hypnotic states. Like when you're driving home and you're like, God, how'd I get here? I don't remember it except leaving the office. And you go into this autopilot. Well, that's considered a self-hypnotic state. Like, you're just basically operating on muscle memory and your brain is just wide open to other things. And so I'm thinking, as people are in these situations where they're just relaxed, they just release the world, like being in the forest, like sitting quietly in your quiet home, just thinking, and suddenly you start hearing and seeing things, and suddenly you're in like going back to the Bigfoot example, you're in the forest and suddenly something changes and you realize that there's this big hairy being there standing there looking at you. And it's like, oh my God, you're face to face with this incredible being that's suddenly in the forest with you. And then this state of like overwhelming panic or shock or surprise or whatever takes over. And then the Bigfoot melts. Well, maybe the Bigfoot didn't go anywhere, but our awareness closed back down to our normal state just due to the stress of that moment. It's just a theory, but to me, it may explain at least some of that strangeness, that maybe they're not always here. Maybe they're just a little out of phase with us in a vibrational realm of reality or whatever. And they can maybe change that to appear and actively operate in our realm, but they can also kind of melt back into their own natural vibration. And so maybe when we're in that theta state, we become wide aware of them and are able to experience them. And then when we experience that adrenaline rush and shock, then we melt out of that. And so they melt away. Our awareness melts away. So, and the reason that I kind of like that theory is, and this is for all of the paranormal, when people experience things and like, oh, there's an apparition of my grandmother standing right there, and you're experiencing it. It's as real as you and me. And then suddenly it melts away. Well, maybe that's a similar case. Like you're doing something and you're in that relaxed state, and boom, your awareness is wide open. You become aware of that. And then it melts away when that stress hits. And so the reason that I really like that theory, and I'm a little biased because it's my theory, but the thing that I like about it is that oftentimes in this paranormal stuff, we figure that we're a victim. It happens to us. We're powerless. We didn't choose anything. It just occurred. But isn't it nice to look at it that we may be an integral part of the experience and helping to facilitate our awareness of it just by our natural state, that maybe we have a degree of control and maybe that empowers us. I don't know. Just a thought. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I will say this first, but then I know Tex has his thoughts. Tex always has his thoughts, which I appreciate.
Do you?
What I like, even though even though I'm facetious sometimes, yes, I do respect your thoughts, Tex.
Oh, thanks. Oh, him. Oh, okay.
I respect. Well, actually, Brent, I respect your thoughts. I can buy into that theory. A couple things that I like about 5 to 8 years old parents. I think that at an early age, and I can talk from my own personal experiences. From an early age, most good parents are going to tell you that monsters don't exist. You have the bad dream. You just had a bad dream. Okay.
Sure.
So we have the built-in defense mechanisms that we carry on throughout our lives. Childhood, middle teenage life, and growing up as being an adult today. So we have these built in, and they're taught by our parents. Because I remember as we talked backstage, I started seeing ghosts, which I thought were ghosts at a young age. And I would get up out of my bed and run to my mom and dad's crying. I seen a ghost. I seen a ghost. Rob, you didn't see a ghost. It was a nightmare. And that proceeded to happen with me throughout the first 3-4 years of life as a young 5 to 8 years old, like you suggested. And you do know that I did read this too, that children at that age, even up, I forgot what the cutoff is. Kids don't know what a lie is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, when they see something or experience something, they've seen it. Now, a dream is a dream. I get it. So we have to it's a delicate line. But I think then as we get older, though, Brent, and you see a Bigfoot at 25 years old or an actual ghost, we still don't process what we're seeing because we are taught these things don't exist and we're having some sort of hallucination. It's got to be something wrong with me versus the actuality of the realization that, you know what, this is actually happening. Now, it might be not in this realm or our reality, but it's something that's occurring. And I can buy into a lot of what you say on that. I don't know if I even made any sense with that statement, to be honest.
I heard the same thing, but I heard it kind of just a little bit of a different way. But they can't. It's not necessarily a lie, but they can't tell what's real and what's not. And that's how they, But I think that's awful convenient because that's how they explain away imaginary friends and all this kind of stuff. But like you were saying, Rob, it's when they have a nightmare or a bad dream or whatever, to them it's very, very real because they don't know the difference.
Yes.
They saw this. They experienced this big monster, so they don't know it's not real. And it's like you said, parents try to reassure them that monsters are not real, blah, blah, blah. And I think that maybe we after we experience something, going back to like I said earlier, I think we kind of get a little bit of that innocence back. It opens us up to where we're more accepting of what's out there. And Brent, you touched on something about the driving home, the muscle memory and everything.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people do. I've done it. I know I've done it. Because you're like, how the hell did I get home?
Yeah.
And I wasn't drinking. But a lot of people, I think, misidentify that as a time loss or a time slip.
Hmm.
You know, it would be very easy to, you know, because if you can't remember the drive, you know, I mean, the logical mind says, well, I didn't remember the drive because I didn't make the drive.
Mhm.
You know, I just teleported from here. I just went through one of Brent's portals, and you know, there I am. But I mean, hell, with my own time loss incident, I try to explain it away just like that, just like what you said. Maybe I just lost track of time.
Hmm.
But you know, a short drive home that you don't remember all of it is one thing. But when you have people experience loss of hours and hours,
Oh, sure.
sometimes even days,
Hmm.
I think that's a whole different ballgame that we're talking about.
Yeah, I would
know.
agree.
I don't know what happens. I can't say what happened to me. Hell, I can't say what happened to somebody else. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. I mean, I think there is certainly missing time and time slips and lots of different phenomena. And I don't mean to imply that that it's, you know, this is the cookie cutter solution
Right.
to everything.
No, of course.
But I think it may explain some of it.
Oh, I absolutely do. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I don't know. Because that's, again, this journey for me is very personal, having experienced so many things. And honestly, I just want to understand what is going on. What does this all mean? Because honestly, you know, and I've said this, I'm going to end up repeating things I've said a million times. So if you're familiar with me, I apologize. But, you know, I don't think that this is where the weird stuff just happened, where things just went sideways, or there's a glitch in the matrix or the reality.
Right.
I mean, this stuff, I think, is the breadcrumbs that are meant to remind us that maybe, you know, there's a lot more to us than what we think. And I do mean us because, you know, I think it all comes back to us at the end of the day. The one common denominator in every paranormal experience is the observer, the experiencer. And oftentimes, again, we just dismiss that as, well, poor you, God, you know, but maybe you're really a part of this process. And to understand that, it would be hopefully empowering for that person, that maybe they can figure out, okay, well, I'm inadvertently turning it on. Maybe I can, you know, consciously turn it off, if you can sort through that. And I don't claim to have the answers for how that's done, but I just think it's a neat concept that oftentimes is just not acknowledged.
Well, you know, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up now because we kind of touched on it on backstage. The other night when we were doing a live show, my dog's talking. The
Now,
other
that's
night,
paranormal in itself.
yeah, when we were doing a live show, we caught an EVP, which we've caught a few, but this one came from my mic, and it was kind of like that. And to me, it sounded like a female with a deeper female voice, but it was definitely this female. So before the show, I'm in the shower. I got the shower running, folks. And over the shower, I hear the same voice go, "How you doing?"
Yeah, no, and you guys, this is today. Yeah, I like that. See, Brent. Yeah, I gotta get. So yeah,
And
and
I've got
I saw
I've
that
got
on
my
the show.
I've got my beard all soaped up and my head all soaped up and everything. And I stopped and I went, "Well, that was creepy."
Did it sound like Barry White? Like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Get it on.
hello. I like your new body type.
Wash that beard.
Oh, stroke it.
Jesus.
Oh boy. Most kids are at school. Well, they're not at school yet. So
Yeah, school started yesterday, I believe. So
yeah, I
here,
think they did. Yeah.
but I don't know, what's going on, but I don't normally have that stuff happen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a talk with whoever's around.
You know, and before the show, that's one of the crazier of the phenomena is these one-off events, and they come up, kind of regularly. These people
Yeah.
will live in a house for decades and never a thing happening. And then suddenly things just kind of go sideways for a day or two or a week, and then they just go back to normal. And it's like, what the hell's going on there? And I think I really believe that, oftentimes we have this concept of spirits that they're anchored to a place. Well, that's where they, did their self-harm, or that's where the car accident happened, or they died in bed there. But maybe some of them are transitory, that they can just kind of move around, and maybe they do it in groups, and they're like, hey, there's a house, hold my beer, and they stop in and kind of raise hell for a while and then leave. I don't know.
That would be us. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, hold my beer. Check this out.
But there's so many, gosh, my mind is exploding right now with so many different thoughts. It's like, let me ask you this, first of all. Okay, now I can't talk about me this way because I've experienced weird stuff ever since I was 5 or 6. It just became enhanced in 2018, and I went and reflected back in my life like, oh, wow, it all makes sense today for me. It did not prior to the encounter, so that happened to get me more aware. And Rob, you know what? You did see ghosts. You did see this. You did see that. But I often find with me personally, the more involved I get with this is like, it seems like more weirder and weirder things happen. It's like the house I currently live in has never had any hauntings in it from what I'm aware of until I got here. And I start talking about weird stuff, 3 days a week, Sometimes I think we manifest this stuff. And I think that, and like Tex said, he don't believe in the you're marked, but I believe that I believe I still this day brought a spirit with me from my old house, my marital house. I think it's here. Because I do believe we do get attached with certain things.
Oh, absolutely.
And I do think that we can manifest these things. Because I think if you dive in your conscious mind, the things out there know, and they know where to seek and find these people. Because if you don't think about it, they're not going to bother with you.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Sure. It's interesting what you touched on something that I think is very important. And this is I've always believed, we have this concept of poltergeist being these projections from potentially people, like they're subconsciously somehow manifesting whatever's going on with them into their environment, and it creates this really intense presence that does a lot of crazy stuff for a period of time and then kind of melts away after a period of time. But there's this new concept that I've stumbled on. And I think this is really interesting. And it came up, Amy Bruni of Kindred Spirits. I was interviewing her, and she brought up this term, and I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a term for it. I had an idea that something like this was going on, but she said that they're called egregores. And what egregores are these manifestations of people. And it's not just one person, it's groups of people. And she in the interview brought up Myrtle's Plantation, like how there's so many legends of Myrtle's Plantation, and how none of them are really verifiable. And so they most probably didn't actually happen, but through the course of visitors coming, knowing these events, the tour guides reinforcing these events, and people having experiences and like shedding fear and all of their anxieties and stuff, that these energies actually coalesce into an intelligence of its own. And it becomes a haunting based upon the fact that people expect it to be there. And the same can be said for, like, how many hotels have you guys heard of through the years that are haunted by the jilted bride who was left at the altar or abandoned, or, whatever. And so she goes to the honeymoon suite and, unalives herself. And or the hotels with the little children spirit fell down an elevator shaft or down the stairs. Well, I mean, and some of those may have merit, but I think these stories kind of migrate. But as they migrate and people believe in them, they become something that people start seeing the apparition of a ghostly bride, and they start seeing a child ghost running down the hallway or rolling a ball or something. And so I think that we are another empowering possibility is that we are manifesting things in our reality by our own expectations. So, there's an old saying in hauntings: don't be afraid. Don't allow yourself to experience fear. Being surprised is natural, but being afraid is in a sense a surrender. I mean, you're basically saying, I have no power over this. It's happening to me, and I can't do anything about it. Well, then you're surrendering, and so it empowers the presence. But maybe through that fear, it continues to feed the energy that is there, whether directly or whether it's actually a sincere independent presence or it's a created presence. You're feeding it. And so I don't know. I think that's fascinating, but it is empowering as well, because we're manifesting some of this stuff. How many people hear something happen in their house, so they go get a digital recorder and they're running around doing EVPs and trying to investigate their own home. Well, they're building that energy. If it wasn't there, if it was just something mundane, it may become there because you're reinforcing that idea and you're projecting it out like a tulpa. So, interesting thoughts.
Yeah, the tulpa is mentioned here in chat. I've seen a few people had brought that up, and my question is this: then it's like, do you think that some people are so intent on, let's say these people are intent on having a cryptid experience, or they want to talk to their passed on father? Do you think that people that are so intent on this, that want this to happen so bad, that when, let's say, they think they have this actual experience, it's just a figment of their imagination,
Well,
that their brain gave them a false memory?
sure. I mean, that's certainly possible, but it's also possible that they actually do project a manifestation and they do experience it.
Right.
It's a very real encounter. And, and for them, it was incredibly powerful event, but it may have stemmed from their own expectation. So it could be both. It could be there's certainly the psychological argument, like, yeah, well, if you think that the spaghetti monster lives in your closet, there's maybe you're going to experience enough things to verify that the spaghetti monster lives in your closet, and that may be psychological. But it also may become a spaghetti monster in your closet because you believed in it for so long and generated so much energy towards it that it coalesces into an entity unto itself.
Because I gotta tell you, since I started doing this show, I really investigate a lot of different things, read a bunch of different things. So I was on this kick last year. I wanted to learn how to astral project.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intent on this, and I would find these videos on YouTube or wherever, and these meditations or whatever, and I would sit there, and I got this book on it and everything. It's sitting over in the corner. I read the first 3 chapters. I was done. I started using it. And Tex knows this story. A lot of the people that follow me may not know this story, but I was sitting in this chair one night, and I was doing this for a couple of weeks at midnight, religiously, 2 or 3 days a week. Nothing. I said, I got to be missing something with this astral projection type that everyone talks about. I kid you not. Finally, one night, I'm in a recliner. I have the meditation on, and I'm there. I'm in the zone. And then all of a sudden, Brent, Tex, everyone listening, I'm crawling down the hallway. Okay. And I'm thinking, why? And I'm thinking in my brain and my conscious mind, what am I doing crawling down my hallway? And it was odd, peculiar. And I stop. I'm on all fours.
Mm-hmm.
I stop, and I turn over and look over my right shoulder. I saw myself, my physical image, sitting in the recliner.
Ooh.
Which I freaked out, and I snapped out of it, and I'm sitting now in the recliner. I talked to a couple people that said I was on the verge of I left my body and I was on the verge of perhaps projecting somewhere. And then I told about all the things, if you don't know what you're doing, that could be very dangerous. You might come back, you could be going somewhere evil, or could become a lost soul. Now, do I buy some of that? Yes and no. So I was just we're having this great conversation. I'm thinking, if I wanted to do this so badly, did I just manifest that? I don't think I dreamt that because it seemed all too real. But at the same time, I'm in a quandary as to what really happened.
Well, things like astral projection, they do take a lot of practice. I mean, you're basically directing your consciousness, your conscious mind to leave your body and to be able to, project yourself somewhere else. And that's no small feat. I mean, that's phenomenal and fantastic. So it doesn't surprise me that it took you a while to have any kind of an experience. People can take years of working at this to have any experiences. So it actually, it's kind of profound that, after just a period of weeks, boom, you had a very real experience for yourself.
Well, if I said weeks, I meant maybe a couple months, but still,
Okay,
it's not a long period of time.
That's well, right. And, I mean, you have to remember that a lot of these things that have become common in our vocabulary were once the purview of very dedicated esoteric practices. They were, done over a period of years of development of, mind, body, spirit, and getting everything to work in conjunction. And then, practicing and pushing your awareness out is, no small thing. So I think it was a very real experience. And it's, I mean, if you were there and you saw it and you're walking away from that going, oh my God, that really happened, then I have no doubt it did. You got to kind of trust in that process, and it's going to be unique for everybody, but it sounds like you found the right key elements for you to have that experience.
I think I found something, but then the thing was this: had I not looked over my shoulder, I'm wondering where my crawling would have led me to. I mean, because when I saw myself is what blew my mind. I'm like, what's going on here?
Sure.
But it was not a dream. I do know it was not a dream.
Yeah. Well, in that case, with all of those things, the one of the core esoteric ideas is that energy follows intention. So once you find yourself in that state, I think the next phase would be to direct your attention or your intention to be somewhere else, or to be, and you could just blindly say, I'm going to, go and just see what you see. But you could also, that's, I think, a very key element of remote viewing. And, possibly Jessica could be a good audience for what you're talking about, to help you, learn to guide that. But
yeah, I mean, we're talking just the three of us BSing and paranormal. We're talking with Brent Thomas, Paranormal Portal. Please subscribe on YouTube. Yeah, it's just, but it seems like ever since I got involved with this, weirder things have happened. And I've had a lot of weird things happen, but everything really hits the fan when you do it on a daily basis. Text, Brent, a lot of people that have these channels, these podcasts, we talk about this daily. We interview guests for shows. We do our own little research, whether you're behind the computer or out in the woods, doesn't matter. It's all the same. And, but we're intent on providing good content and learning. So sometimes I think that some people, a lot of the greatest inventors of our time drove themselves crazy by overworking and just, and just studying. A lot of these guys, who was the guy that committed suicide because he was just too involved in his work? Freud or somebody like, I don't know, one of the greats from the past. But sometimes I wonder if you study something too much and you're too involved with it, negative energy or frequencies can overtake you. I guess that's my gist that I always worry about. That's all.
Sure. And there are very real things out there that would, possibly prey on those circumstances. So that's why I was talking about esoteric practices, is there's also a big element of that is learning how to protect yourself, because you will be venturing into a different version of reality. And you're probably wildly unprepared for that. So learn how to protect yourself, how to guard your energy, and that's all.
I agree with you, Brent. Thank you so much for that. And Kimber says, you open enough doors, someone or something is going to eventually come in. I think that's a pretty accurate statement. My
Yeah.
belief, anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's, you know, if you challenge the universe enough, something's going to answer. You know, it's like all those people running around investigating. It's like, well, take my energy, you know, and it's like, oh God, don't do that, because something's going to take you up on that. And you've got to be ready for the wrestling match then. And yeah, I think there's some incredibly potent and powerful things out there. And I don't mean to inspire fear by saying that, just to remember that, you know, we live in a very small segment of our reality, and there's a lot more reality out there. It's like you wouldn't go into the woods dragging pork chops. You know, you just don't do that. That's a bad idea, because something's gonna smell that and get hungry. And
Yeah,
I think it's very much the same for the rest of reality as well. And by the way, I want to say, I did see many people in the chat saying hi to me at the beginning of the show. I tried to chat back, but my chat's not working. So I've been waving when I've seen it. So just to let you guys know, I'm not ignoring the chat. I just can't respond in chat.
Yeah, you know, we do have a great bunch of people in chat, and I always tell the people, if I don't say hi, it's not because I missed you or ignored you. We can't read everything, but thank you on Brent's behalf, and of course, text from Texas Front Porch. And we're at the 50-minute mark. Really quick before we continue on, I did want to thank Kimber being a pirate for 2 months. Thanks, Kimber.
Woo.
Denise for the super sticker, and Paranormal Pixie Laura for donating 5 Bigfoot Michigan Rob pirate memberships. You too can become a pirate today. Please join. Super chats are open. And thank you so much. And if you came in late, the link to my new book is out. Pick up a copy today. Thank you for that shameless plug. Moving on.
Moving on.
You know, today is National Thrift Shop Day, but before I get into that, Tex, I know you've been sitting there for a little bit. I'm sure that you've got questions for Brent. I opened a Pandora's box, I know, but
not really. It's just, you know, when we're talking about manifesting stuff and everything, and getting on the cryptid side of things.
okay.
Well, it's actually, for me, it's on the paranormal side of things, but it involves the cryptids. And I think you may be onto something, because if you go out, I don't care if you're investigating a haunted house, or if you're getting out in the woods, whatever you're really concentrating on finding, I think it's very possible that something mischievous will show you exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If nothing else, to get their foot in the door and mess with you. And I think it's very dangerous in that aspect. And as far as the whole astral projection, I ain't playing with that. I just ain't doing it. I mean, it's that, to me, that's leaving myself way too open for something that I don't want to deal with. On a level, I don't want to deal with it. I deal with that crap all the time, but not on that level. So yeah, Tex ain't gonna be playing with that.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm kind of scared of it now, because I call, you know, Brian. We know Brian Bowden. You know, Brent, you might be familiar. He knows a little bit about that. He said, if you don't know what you're doing, you could be going. You're gonna be in some serious trouble. And you know,
Yeah.
I'm kind of off of that now for obvious reasons. So
Yeah, because it's like, who was it? Kimber said, you open a door, you don't know who's going to walk through it. You know, You got to be careful with that stuff. And I've even gotten leery of even doing EVP sessions.
Sure.
And stuff like that, because when I first got into it, I'm like, yeah, EVP sessions, these things will talk to you. Now it's like, I don't know about that.
yeah, Brett, maybe you can answer this or have a thought on this. Text yourself. For me today, When I grew up on monster movies. Lon Chaney, Boris Karloff, my dad, right? It was always these monster movies. And then as I got older, I watched the paranormal shows. I watched all of these creepy stuff. I was a horror film buff, right? And except for as again, everyone knows, The Exorcist freaks me out because I grew up Catholic and I do believe that the devil exists. I believe in God.
But he's never seen Beetlejuice.
I never saw Beetlejuice, correct. So, but I would watch these paranormal things as a kid or a young guy in my 20s, 30s, 40s. I start doing this show, and I'm more scared today than I was because today I believe. See, when I saw a paranormal show, I didn't really believe, right? When I saw a horror film, I didn't really believe. But today, with everything I've gone through and reflecting back on life, today I'm a believer. I'm a knower for one, for a lot of different things, of course. But now I believe, and I feel that the more I believe, the more I'm open to things happening. And I'm not saying in a negative way. It could be negative, could be positive, but I'm more reluctant to go down these rabbit holes because of opening a door, like Kimber said, right? So that's always in the back of my mind, which kind of I get a little standoffish, like the girls, the blondes and the blues. You know, I'm going to do a paranormal ghost thing with them eventually. I've been attached by a ghost before, and I don't think I got rid of. I think I do. It comes and it goes. It's not creepy or scary. Brent, I saw a shadow person out of the darkness of the darkness a long time ago. Me and my wife collected all these artifacts, found out they were haunted. I was a kid in my 20s, blew it off, saw it again, though, and it's a long story. I'm not getting into that, and I got rid of everything. But I didn't go through the processes that I know today to relieve them from my attachment that I still might have. So that kind of freaks me out even till today.
Yeah, that's very true. That items can have an energy or an attachment as well. It's tough. Again, I'm not trying to ever reinforce the whole idea of fear. It's because I think that's an important takeaway, and we're conditioned by movies and things to be afraid of this stuff, but I think in a lot of cases, I do think that there's plenty of evil things around, and devils, demons, imps, and possibly pissed off elementals, and other things and people, former people that were just horrible and continue to be horrible in their spiritual experience. But I think that in most cases these things are much more benign than we're led to believe, and it's because you see the cupboard door open, it's like, oh my God, and it's frightening. It startles you, and it doesn't make sense. And so, but again, going back to the fear thing, you got to remember that in many cases, these might be just earthbound spirits that are stuck. Now, imagine you're an earthbound spirit and you're stuck in a space, and continuously people are coming and going all around you and in your presence, but never acknowledging you, never making any kind of connection. Now, if that happened to a living person, they would go absolutely insane. Your mind would crack, because we are social beings. Well, that doesn't change. We don't know why they're still here. For any number of reasons. We can go into a myriad of possibilities, but the point is that they just may need a connection, and they only have so many methods to let you know, hey, I'm here, and so I just to paraphrase an example of this one place, it was a couple of college students, three college students lived in this apartment in New York City, and they had this crazy activity going on, things getting thrown, broken, and all this stuff, and they were kind of beside themselves. And so one of them had an idea one day. Look, let's call it Charlie. We're going to call it Charlie, and let's talk to Charlie. And so they started doing that. Hey, Charlie, I'm home. Had a really weird day, but had a good day, had a bad day, whatever. Just started addressing this presence. And then when they're going, Charlie, run into the store, I'll be back in a few minutes. And they did this. And as they did this, the activity became almost I mean, it was still a presence, but it was no longer aggressive. It was just like they had formed this connection. They had acknowledged this presence, and they were, in a sense, giving it a validity, which I think is important because, let's say there is an earthbound spirit. It's attached to a house. They love that house. That was their house. That's one of the reasons why, if you ever want to know you're haunted, start renovating, because they may not like your drapes or your choice of wallpaper, or they might be pissed you took out that wall. But if you acknowledge those things and address them, much like you would a person, a lot of, like 90% of the time, those activities will die down and just be much more mundane and maybe even pleasant. So
I think that's a reason that if you start noticing activity, you need to take ownership of that house, and because if you don't, I'm not saying being an a-hole about it, just, take ownership of it and let them know, whatever it is or whoever it is, that I live here now.
Yes.
But
communicate. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell them they're welcome, but I'm going to tell them they need to move on now. I mean, I used to feel differently, but now I'm going to say, you need to go ahead and move on. And I think that's they got very lucky. Those folks, because it very well could have went sideways on them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sure could. I mean, the thing is if you address a spirit and it continues to be horrible, or if you say, hey, knock it off, this isn't okay, and it continues to be horrible, then you're dealing with something pretty dark, and you should probably take more steps. But you make a great point, and Kimber in the chat said, take your space back. And that's a very powerful statement, because it's very true. And 95% of the cases are better by people just saying, hey, I know you're here, but knock it off. You don't scare the kids. You don't bother my pets. That's not okay. If you do that, you got to go. And a lot of times it does. It stops. I mean, because it's an acknowledgement, which I think is an important part of that. But it's also saying, hey, this is my sovereign space. You're in it, but you can't do this. I'm not okay with that. And for some reason, they often honor that. And I think it's because if you're dealing with a formerly living person, most people don't go out of their way to be jerks. I mean, they don't go out of their way to raise hell for people and cause problems. They just try to live their life, so again, it's just my thoughts, but I think it's a powerful takeaway. Oh, I want to say hi to Duke as well. I see Duke was in there earlier, said, I haven't seen Brent since Coloma. It's like, how you doing, brother? Good to see you.
Yeah, again, hello to everybody. Thanks for coming in. And also, thank you for the people. That reminds me, I love everybody in chat. Thanks for coming on in. And also, which I'm trying to do every time I do a show, I got to thank the people that are currently watching, not in the chat room, because you're all, I appreciate you as much as people that are in the chat room, because you probably make up the bulk of the views and you're watching. I always thank you guys, and thank you for subscribing. Subscribe to Bigfoot Mr. Rob on YouTube if you're new. Texas Front Porch, The Blondes and the Booze, Brent Thomas, The Paranormal Portal, and yes, I'll plug Duke. Bigfoot World, Bigfoot Central. You can find him on Sundays. I think at 9 o'clock it is. So thanks for that. And I have to apologize for stepping away. It always seems that I get somebody rapping at my back door during this time on Thursday, and Tex can attest to that. I do it more than once. It was my lawn guy. He wants his money. I said, come back later. So anyway,
if you're distributing money, tell me where you live. I'll be stopping by.
I did not. I told him to come back and cut the grass. I'll see you later. I got another 20, 30, 40 minutes of a show here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rob. Well, you do it all the time. So I learned a lot. This is a great show. And Brent, a lot of the people out in the chat room and people listening do like a good paranormal tale. And I'm wondering, it could be a personal experience, Brent, that you've had personally, which always are very cool. I know you've told a few of yours in the past. Anything lately that you care to share with our audience?
You know, this house that I live in has been active to a degree. When I first moved in, it was much more active. It's gotten much more calm now. So nothing really happening here. There's one story that I shared on Coast to Coast on Tuesday night.
Oh,
If you don't do, if you
really quickly, congratulations. I wrote that down to congratulate you on your debut. On I think it's first time around. Was that on Monday night?
Tuesday night, Tuesday from
Okay.
well, it was actually Wednesday morning, but it was from midnight Pacific time till 2 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, congratulations. That's cool to get on that show.
Oh, thank you, man. It was really stressful, but in a good way. I mean, it was a good experience. I'm glad I went.
Yep. I'll have to go listen to it. I haven't seen it, listened to it yet, but I will.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, but I shared an experience there, and it's a very, very personal story. But because oftentimes we focus on the negative ghost stories, the negative experiences, but this was honest to God, very positive. And it was a beautiful testament to what I believe is the survival of our souls. And so I'm going to try to hold it together. This is a very emotional story for me, but so the situation is a few years ago, my dad several years ago, my dad actually got sick, and he was diagnosed with COPD. Now, my dad and I had we had a real deep and profound love for each other, but we also had a very challenging relationship because he was a really stoic, my way or the highway guy, and this is the way it's going to be, old school, which I did respect, but I also resented it. You know, it was like, oh, controlling, and so we butted heads all the time, and not all the time. Maybe I'm overstating that, but we definitely had our challenges, and anyway, but at this time I was already living out here in the north of Idaho. I'm from Minnesota originally. And so I was living out here, and my dad, of course, got progressively worse, as happens with COPD. And so I would travel home when I could and visit with him and saw him. And then I came back home, and it was maybe another year and a half. And I got the call. Your dad passed away last night, or actually today. It was a daytime passing. And it was like somebody punched me in the chest for any number of reasons. But one of the reasons was that there was so much left unsaid. And it hurts because I knew that for the rest of my life, I was just going to have to eat that I didn't take the chance, the opportunity to have that discussion and to apologize for all the times that I was not a good son, or I wasn't the best son I could have been. And I didn't cherish the relationship as much as I should have been, so all of those things you just kind of live with. And it was painful because my dad was gone, and I knew that there was this heap of emotional baggage still in me. And so I was really distraught about it and trying to process it, but you just kind of resign yourself to that fact. But I went to sleep one night, and I can't tell you how long after he passed that this happened. And I think several of you in the audience may relate to this, because I don't think it's uncommon, but it was a very beautiful experience. But and this is an evolving story, so bear with me. I might be long-winded here. So I went to sleep one night, and suddenly I found myself standing in my parents' house, my mom and dad's house, knowing with full well that my dad had passed. And I was standing there in the house, and it was as real as me, or realer than me and you sitting here talking. I mean, it was more real than this experience right now that I'm having being on your show. It was just so incredibly powerful and vivid and visceral. And so I was standing there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, well, how am I here? And then I look over to my left and into the living room. I'm standing like in the dining room area. Look over in the living room, and there's my dad standing there. And he's smiling. And I'm like, Dad, and I rushed over to him, and I embraced him, and all of this emotion just poured out as we had this moment. It smelled like him. It looked like him. It felt like him. It was, every bit of that reality was real in every part of my being. So I embraced him, and I apologized, and I said all of these things that I'd been carrying and thought I'd have to carry with me for the rest of my life. And he said things, but his mouth never moved. his mouth never moved, but I could hear him saying these things like, I apologized to him, he apologized to me, and we had this bonding, incredible moment. And I'm just all, emotion. I got, tears washing down my face. And then I wake up and I'm literally still bawling. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. So in my experience, that was my closure. Now skeptics could say, look, that was your subconscious mind processing this stuff, and you created this incredible experience in order to let it go. I don't believe that. I don't believe it. It was real. It was more real than this. So that happened. Now, other things started happening at my mom's house. My dad was not a believer in any of this, just for the record. And as a side note, my dad was not, he was not a technological man. This is a man that worked. He did work. He worked like 3 jobs most of his life, and just was always working, building, cutting, mowing, everything that he could. He was a very physical person, just terrible with technology. So like my mom and dad had 2 different TVs. My mom's was in the living room. My dad's was in a 4-season porch. Because she liked to watch true crime, and my dad liked Walker, Texas Ranger, and Gunsmoke. He was one of those guys. So but he would always have to call my mom. Come on in here. I can't change the channel. I can't do this. I can't do that. So his TV was set up with like a digital cable, but it was a smart TV, but he never was able to set up anything. It was just a matter of navigating to his shows. And so what started happening was his TV started turning on by itself. All hours of the day, just turn on like he was there. And he actually passed away in the chair out there at his TV. And so he started turning on the TV. Then that my parents have like this seasonal, it's kind of a Christmas tree, but they just use it as a seasonal tree. It's all the time, but it's got this step on, power thing to turn on the lights. The lights would start turning on like he always did. And then lights would flicker in the house suddenly just out of nowhere. And then my mom would be watching TV and her channels would start changing. It was like he was making himself known. And so we had all these incredible events that mom and I were talking about. She would call me and tell me this is what happened now. And so it was this incredible event. So I was sitting here in my studio, and it was a Friday. I remember this very clearly. I don't know which Friday, but I was sitting here in my studio and my phone rang, and I looked down, and it's my mom calling me. So I answer, I'm like, hello? Nobody's there. Like nobody's on the phone, but in the background I hear like and like some mumbling and stuff. But I'm like, hello, mom. I'm thinking my mom pocket dialed me. Her phone, she must have leaned against it or whatever. And my eldest brother must be over there visiting, and because it kind of sounded like him, but it was kind of muffled and distant. And I was like, oh, what's going on? So I'm like, mom, can't get her attention. I tried for several minutes to whistle and holler into the phone, nothing. So I hung up, and I figured, well, I'll call her back. That way her phone will ring, and I can tell her she called me. So I call back. It rings. Nobody answers. Like, well, maybe she didn't hear it ring. Maybe she's got it on vibrate. It's a cell phone, whatever. So I'm sitting here in my studio after that fact, and about 15 or 20 minutes later, mom calls me and says, yeah, what'd you need? Like, oh, no, I didn't need anything. I said, you just pocket dialed me or something because your phone just called me 15 minutes ago. And she goes, what? I said, yeah, your phone called me. And I said, and by the way, is Jeff, my brother, over there? She goes, no, I'm alone. I said, well, I could hear somebody mumbling and coughing in the background. I figured you and Jeff were having a discussion, and you must have leaned on your phone or something and accidentally called me. And she goes, that's impossible. And I'm like, why? And she said, well, I'm home alone. The house is locked. Wow. And my phone was on the dining room table. I was downstairs in the shower. She said, I haven't been up here for about 25 minutes. I was like, oh my God. So it gets better, Rob. It gets better. This is the first part. So I'm sorry for the long story, but so I go on my show that Friday night, and I'm explaining to my audience, hey, look at all this weird stuff's going on. We think my dad's hanging around. It's really cool. And it's amazing because his TV turns on and goes on different channels and stuff. And this man could hardly operate a remote. So he's got it all sorted out now. So I'm talking to everybody about this and go into all this description and discussion about it on my show. I get done with my show, shut down everything, and then basically it's about 11 o'clock. I go to bed, and I wake up the next morning, and I'm sitting here in the studio. Mom calls me. She goes, "You're never going to believe what happened." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Well, this morning, your dad's TV turned on by itself." I said, "Oh," wow. And she goes, "Well, not only that, it was on the internet." And I was like, "What?" because I knew that it was never configured to get on the internet. Like it was never set up for that. She goes, yeah, but it gets weirder. She says, not only was it on the internet, it was on YouTube. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, but not only YouTube, it was on your station, on Paranormal Portal YouTube channel.
No.
And she said, and it was playing the episode of you explaining what was going on in this house.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, this is like 15 layers of impossibility stacked. That's like the odds of opening your dryer and having perfectly folded clothes. You know, I mean, it's just bizarre, right? But it was so profound and beautiful and mesmerizing that he was so determined to say, I'm still here. I'm okay, you know, or whatever he's trying to say. But I mean, is that just not amazing?
Well, number one, it's a great story. Number two, yes, that is like amazing. That is,
man.
That's why I love doing these shows, stories like that, man.
Well, you know, and it reminds me of something I had happen to me at work. We had a guy pass away. He had a stroke and he passed away. And we had a phone that we carried. Everybody passed it from shift to shift, right? Mm-hmm. And it got all the alarms and all that kind of stuff. And about 3:00 in the morning, me and my shift partners walking through, because I had to go to night shift because we had to have somebody to cover. So I went to night shift, and me and my shift mates walking through the building. And about 3:00 in the morning, and I got the phone in my pocket, and it starts ringing. I'm like, what in the world? So I pick it up, pull it out of my pocket, and I look, and it's that guy's number. And I'm like, take it out, and I look at it. I'm like, I hit my partner. I said, look at this. You know? And I look at him and said, he goes, are you going to answer it? I said, yes. So I answered the phone. And I said hello several times, and you know, nothing. I figured it was his wife had mistakenly, you know, like you said, rolled over or whatever.
Right.
Nothing and nothing and nothing. I waited a few minutes and I hung it up.
Wow.
Now you would think that if it was his wife, when she woke up the next day and realized what she had done, she might send a text or call and go, hey, I'm sorry, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Never nothing. Wow. Never nothing. So I see where you're coming from. You know, it's like, I mean, it's nothing like your story, but it's
still very cool
along the same lines. And that stuff happens, you know?
Yeah. Brett, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I can tell it's a little emotional, and it is emotional.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's something that you'll always remember. And there are a lot of layers to that. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because that's what I love doing these shows, you know, have people like yourself on to get down, not worry about being judged, and tell your story despite being very personal. So I respect and appreciate that, man. And
oh, thank you.
And you know, and this story is nothing like your story or even what Tex just said, but now it brings me back. Now I'm thinking all emotional about my dad. The last thing, you know, and this is a little different, it's not paranormal, but it reminds me, people know when their time is up, I guess. My dad did a great job raising me, but he was kind of his way or the highway type of thing too. You know, we always butted heads. I did not want to get a business degree. I wanted to be a journalist. That's a dime of a dozen. You think you're going to be a sportscaster on the news? Yeah, Dad, that's what I want. Well, if I'm paying for college, this is what you're doing. So that kind of sucked. Going to computer science, that's boring. Well, I should have done that. I'd be a millionaire today. But regardless,
sure,
he was right. I mean, my dad was always right, it seems. Why is the dad always right? Because my dad seemed like he was always right. But anyway, I just remember he got very sick, not to get into this. And I remember seeing him at the hospital, and I'm like talking to him, and he goes, hey, Robbie. I go, what? Go to the house, get my slippers. I said, oh, your feet cold? You have no slippers here? What? What's going on? No, I want you to have them. I go, your slippers? He goes, yeah. I know you'll like them. He had a really expensive, cool slippers that he bought, like $100 slippers. I go,
Wow.
okay, I can have them. He goes, yeah. I said, well, Dad, don't worry. You're going to need them when you get home. He goes, I just want you to have them. Got his slippers. Next morning, he passed.
Wow.
He knew, and it has nothing to do with your story or Texas, but it just reminded me of my dad for some reason.
Oh,
Terrible.
That's beautiful, though.
But it's a great story, but man, you never know. And, people know these things. People know there's a reason for everything, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm convinced that my mother knew that she was going to die because she went the day before she died. She went, and my dad was bedridden with cancer. Okay, we had a hospital bed in the living room, and she slept on the couch. And so the day before she dies, she goes and gets her hair fixed and everything, and gives me my birthday present 10 days early. And she died in her sleep that night.
Wow.
And my dad, which couldn't get up without help, got up, and he woke me up that morning. He says, I can't wake your mother up. And I knew as soon as he said it, And I walked in, and she's laying on the couch, and she had this little Mona Lisa-like smile on her face. And she'd been dead a while, But I never will forget that, But I think the most beautiful part of that story that you told, Brent, was when you talk about the things that go unsaid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it was your subconscious. I don't think it was. But you got to do something that so many people don't get to do.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've got a lot of freaking regrets. I couldn't apologize for the little butthole son I was being. I was 19 when this happened. So, and of course, my dad, he passed away 4 months later on my mom's birthday.
Oh.
And he didn't die of cancer. He died of a heart attack. So in my mind, he died of a broken heart,
Right.
Yeah. But, and I think just about everybody has a story like that.
Yeah.
At some point in their life, I think they will have, a loved one pass away, and they have something like this. But I just think it is so freaking awesome that you got to say what needed to be said, and so did he. Because I think that, honestly, I think that's why he came to you like that, is because he had unfinished business and he had things that you needed to hear.
And it's funny. There's another part of that story that I've not really ever told before publicly, but I'll tell it now. And it's a much quicker version of that. But there was, and I think you're right. I think he stuck around for quite a while just because of those kind of things, that he wanted to be there, because he was always working. I mean, he was working, hanging out with his friends, never really hung around the family. So I think that was his way of, I missed this. I'm going to hang around for a while now. And I had another dream that was just as equally real, but I found myself on a staircase, and he was on a higher part of the staircase, and he was coming down, and I remember the sky in the background, but he was coming down the staircase, and I was walking up to embrace him once more, but he hit a like a wall, an invisible wall. And it was like he wanted to get through that, but he couldn't. And I saw the determination in his eyes as he pushed with all of his considerable might, and his hands came out a little bit, and I held what I could, and then he couldn't sustain it. And I knew that was him finally transitioning, like going to what's next. And it was like, wow. And I've not shared that ever before. So that's
wow.
First, but I think that was him saying, I have to go, and
right.
Yeah.
And so it was a beautiful moment, but it was also sad. I woke up with tears again, but
yeah, you know this. So the last 10 minutes of this show took quite the turn, but but that's why I love doing the show, and it's what I love about the show is the human element, right? Things in life happen, and they happen for a reason, and they're real. They're as real as the paranormal, as real as crypt is, and they're as real as monsters. I believe in all these things, and that's why I love doing the shows, and those great stories shared by everybody. A sad moment for everybody, but enlightening at the same time. We got a few minutes left, Brent. I got maybe a little more uplifting before we go. Although I think a message was spoken to everybody today, so I appreciate the stories. You mentioned Duke was in the chat. You mentioned Coloma. Now, Coloma is a ghost town, from what I recall. Did you recall? Is there a quick anything weird happen? Because we got about 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
You can go over 5 minutes with the story because I don't want you to cheapen it. But anything crazy happen?
The creepiest part of Coloma for me, the town itself is got this really powerful energy to it. It's just, in most everything in Coloma is in ruins. Like there's only, I don't know if it's still standing, but there's one miner's cabin that was still standing, but everything else is just in different states of disarray. And there's this really cool dolmen spot that Duke showed me where it's like this, it looks like it was, man-made, but in an ancient sense. And it's interesting because this is Montana. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the Sage Wall, but that was this wall that was discovered on these people's property that are, these huge granite rocks are stacked in a wall. And it's ancient, but it was buried under all this undergrowth. So they uncovered this. So there does seem to have been something really profound going on in Montana in the ancient past. So I don't know who was there or what they were doing. Maybe giants, maybe something. I don't know. But anyway, the really creepiest part of Coloma for me was this abandoned hunting cabin that's up there. And it's from, I think the last news article that we could see was from the early 90s when we were there. So nobody's been there for a long time, and it's in a state of disarray, but there's like dishes out, like maybe somebody left in a hurry. There's this rotted potbelly stove that was made out of a barrel, and it's all falling apart and stuff. So I mean, this cabin's been up there and unvisited, I think, for quite a long time. But the first year that I was up there and the second year, I went there 2 years. We always did some investigating for ghost stuff in there, and I'm here to tell you that place is already different during the day, but when night comes, it gets really creepy in that place. Like the energy just turns and you can feel something does not want you there. And we got some strange EVPs. So like in my mind's eye, what I was picturing was this guy making a gun with his fingers and going bang, 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 and then we got Get Out and screams and some really crazy stuff. So I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go now. so we left. And then when I was down at another part with Dan and I the first year, I was panning around with my camera and I did see, and Duke could verify this because he looked at the footage, but what looks like a figure ducking down up on the hill. And apparently we did the second year that I went up, Duke went up and did kind of a size comparison, and whatever it was had to have been about at least half again as tall as Duke, and Duke's right around the 6 foot mark or 5'11". So whatever it was, if indeed that's what I captured, and it's very quick and very, very, very hard to see, but once you see it, it's definitely something ducking down, like as I was panning around with my camera. So whatever it was had to have been well beyond people range in height.
Okay, wow.
So there's a lot going on up in Coloma, and it's a neat place. I really enjoyed going up there when I did.
That sounds like a really neat place.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's another thing that has to be traveled to always. And Duke always says you got to come here if you want to see some real creatures, or Bigfoot, I should say. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's mountain giants. There's all sorts of crazy things going on in this world, right? And so Coloma, I got that. I got a board over of all things I want to do in the next 10 years. And Coloma and Montana's on the board. Not Coloma, but Montana.
Sure.
But
yeah, it'd be worth checking out. I think it's pretty fantastic, and I know Duke has a few areas that he likes to frequent and has had some pretty apparently amazing things happen. So yeah, it's definitely worth a visit.
Indeed, and this has been such a great show, Brent. I always welcome. You're always welcome back. I'm glad you come on when you come on, and so Brent, you are the Paranormal Portal, found on YouTube. I have your links in this chat. Anything else you would like to promote before we go?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the YouTube is certainly a big part of what I do, but it's also a podcast, which is there's two different shows. I do live streams on YouTube, which are more variety shows dealing with many different aspects of the paranormal, supernatural, Fortean topics. And then the podcasts are just essentially me interviewing people. Like I interviewed George Norrie, Michael Freeman, Ronnie LeBlanc, and many wonderful people. I mean, not that I'm just all about celebrities. So please, I apologize if that sounded like.
Well, I think you had Tex. He's no celebrity.
Tex is a celebrity for sure. We love Tex.
I was giving Tex some crap.
And I gotta get BMR on the show at some point.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you will.
Well, I don't think I've ever been on your podcast.
Well, you have, but yeah, you've been on the podcast.
Yeah.
So when you're on the YouTube, I took the YouTube audio and created a podcast episode from it.
Oh, okay.
So you were on both, believe it or not, Tex. Just with one visit, you killed two birds with one stone.
Oh my god!
There you go.
All I did was a simple phone in like 5 years ago.
I know, but it was great. It was a memorable. I still remember that.
I know. I was so surprised. Well, I'm not surprised. I know you have a good memory.
Well,
but yeah, well,
hey,
everybody remembers my story though. It's hard to forget.
Yeah, it is. It was a very profoundly powerful story. But I tell you what, if you want to know the best place to go to learn about the Paranormal Portal and where to find it is paranormalportal.net. Okay. That is the best site because it's my central hub for everything that I do. So
send me that link as well. I'll put that by because I have your YouTube link in this description. Well, sure. I can look up the link, but it's easy if I could cut and paste it for you.
Sure.
So yeah, again, always a fantastic show. And with that being said, before we leave, however, I always got to do this. Thanks to Kimber. She's been a pirate for 2 months. She's 2 months membership. Thanks, Danny. Rob, his son ordered a book for my second book. Everybody, my second book's out there. The link's in the chat and in my channel. Denise for the super sticker, and Laura for the gifting the 5 memberships. I do appreciate donations. Memberships are not expected, but always greatly appreciated. I'm humbled every time anybody throws me any loot. So, hey, it's tough times. I do appreciate that. Tex, today is Thursday. You're on the air Monday, Texas Front Porch. Sunday. Monday's 8 to you're on Sunday, Truth or Tinfoil. If you're into true crime, 7:00 in East.
Truth or Tinfoil, Randy's show comes on at 5.
Well, Randy, you guys have a mishmash of all these shows. You got to send me the schedule, man. Okay, please. I do know this. Subscribe to Brent's channel.
Help Brent.
Subscribe to Brent's channel. Texas Front Porch, Bigfoot Mr. Rob, the Blondes and the Booze, and good old Duke out there, World Bigfoot Central. With that being said, I got to play Tex. I got to find the button to get the hell out of here. I appreciate you, Brent. It's always a great show to come on. Genuine guy, humble guy, and you have fantastic media out there for everybody to view. So thank you so much for that. And Tex, I can't find the damn button. Oh, there it is. See you guys later.